to Trench Talk. This is a Metal Trenches podcast. First time doing it, so if it's terrible, you can let us know all about it at our Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, what have you. Trying to sort of evolve this. It's been something I've been wanting to do for some time. A lot of my favorite podcasts have like a really strong two-person dynamic, and that's just not something I have right now. So this will be interesting just doing it with myself because unfortunately Chris and Raffi and most of the other contributors to the site live on the other side of the country from me. So it's a lot more difficult for me to pair up. So if there's anyone out there that lives in the West Coast areas, particularly around Portland, and would be interested in just kind of shooting the shit about music, again, hit up our social media or our email, metal.trenches@gmail.com. For now, I'm just going to kind of dig into some favorite albums, maybe on a weekly or monthly basis, just get in a little bit more depth with them. Also planning on doing a top 10 or at least some sort of list later on towards the holidays, sort of a buyer's guide, if you will. Also share some music news, current events that are going on as it relates to the metal scene, a few thoughts on that, and probably a few shout-outs too. So again, if you have any ideas on what you'd like to hear from this podcast, just let me know. Also interested in doing interviews. So again, if there are bands in the Portland area or they're coming through the Portland, Oregon area and would like to just sit down and kind of do an open form interview, less question focused, more just sort of, again, chatting about anything and everything, hit us up. So today I wanted to talk a little bit more about Moss Upon the Skull. Moss Upon the Skull are a Belgian progressive death metal band. We put up a review on the site about 2 weeks ago. The album just dropped on Friday. That was October 19th. And it is awesome. Like, it's absolutely awesome. That digital version is out right now. You can also, if you're in Europe or on that side of the world, you can get copies right now of physical as well for after shipping and everything. You can either get it off of Bandcamp for, it looks like it's €13 right now plus shipping, and then the label I Void Hanger is also working on selling it online for a little bit cheaper than that. Obviously, if you're frugal and cheap like me, you might want to wait. They're going to be selling physical copies through Season of Mist, and I guess they're just not stocked up with that just yet, but that is coming down the pipe, so that's where I'm planning on picking up a copy. I try to, on a weekly basis, pick up as much physical as I can nowadays just to kind of keep it alive, because it makes me sad, honestly, going to stores now, and it's harder and harder to find anything. I was really bummed that, I don't buy a lot of music at Best Buy anymore, because it's kind of lame and they're not going to carry most of the stuff that I like, but every now and then there would be like a bigger release like Dillinger Escape Plan, and you could nab it for like $7 on the day that it dropped. But my Best Buy finally pulled the plug and completely removed the final aisle of CDs that they had left. And I even went up to the staff there and was kind of like, did it finally happen? They're like, yep, it's over. And I was like, all right, well, got it. If you want to keep this music rolling, in some ways there's never been a better time to be a musician, especially a metal musician, with things like Bandcamp, where you can share your stuff digitally to anyone instantaneously. And buddies over at Mathcast talk about this all the time, where Name Your Price is such an amazing thing, where you can just let people from all around buy your music, and oftentimes people will contribute more than you'd expect, and then you're getting your music out there to a broader audience than if you were charging the standard $10 or what have you. So anyways, all that to say, you can buy, the album's called In Vengeful Reverence, and you can get it online via Bandcamp and then physical versions through iVoidhanger, and also coming up through Season of Mist. So please do support this band because they are awesome. Like I said, they're from Belgium. They came out in 2010, and kind of looking over their info here, they say that they've got a strong focus on philosophy, spiritualism, decay, and the mysteries of nature and the afterlife. Very spooky. They've, I guess, had 2 EPs prior to this, but this is their first full-length album, which just makes it all the more impressive. Because I'm telling you, this thing from start to finish is just incredible. There's not a bad song in the album. There's no real lulls in energy. It's got great dynamics, so there are definitely some ups and downs in pacing, but quality-wise, just perfection. And that's really what I look for in the bands that I really want to share, especially the bands that I'm planning on talking about in full form on podcast. They recommend their music. In terms of influences, they say Gorguts, Pestilence, and even some Morbid Angel. I would definitely say Gorguts is probably the strongest connection that you'll hear on this. It's got that same very just proggy kind of all over the place guitar riffs, a lot more focus on technicality. I definitely hear that Morbid Angel heaviness in this, but they're much more technical than that. They lean far further towards, in my mind, I was thinking a lot of Gorod, if you've heard Antlion, Alkaloid, also Obscura, Cynic, things of that nature. I was also getting some really strong John Frum vibes the more I was listening to this, if you heard that album a couple months back. Just great plotting, chugging riffs, very heavy, kind of like this swampy aesthetic, mixed in with sort of those Opethy galloping riffs, and just all around really amazing. The death vocals, super satisfying, very just well produced. There's some reverb on them too, so it really just feels like you're being surrounded by this monstrous force, and this voice is just super commanding. Yeah, it's just great. And speaking of the vocals too, while the death style, like you don't hear him kind of jumping in range, he kind of sticks to this pretty typical kind of death growl. But then they did throw in some clean vocals, but it's not really like singing. It's more of that sort of church-like ominous chanting. In my review, I talked about how it kind of reminds me a little bit of Shamash, especially their third album. There was a lot of that going on, sprinkled throughout that 3-disc affair. By the way, if you have not heard Shamash's third album, then you are missing out, and you are a failure. So please do correct that as quickly as you possibly can. But going back to Moss Upon the Skull, I could just not get enough of this album. It was absolutely incredible. I'm listening to it again as I'm talking right now, and just remembering how amazing it is. The guitar work, particularly. You've got, just like I was saying, these really chuggy, kind of just full riffs that really just wrap around you and are kind of choking in a way. And then there's also some breaks of just soloing and these really cool lead parts. I'm hearing a lot of like hammer-ons and pull-offs going on too as I'm talking right now, mixed in with that chanting that I just mentioned. And it just creates this really heavy atmosphere to go along with the just impressive songwriting. So on all levels, really impressive. It's not the most original thing I've heard. Like, again, if you're already listening to things like Obscura and Alkaloid and what have you, this isn't going to sound like this new amazing thing. It's like, okay, I know what this is. That said, it's so consistent and just so well done that these guys could easily go toe-to-toe with any of those bands. And on the same note, their musicianship and their songwriting is just perfection. Really solid stuff. I rated their musicianship as a 9, but honestly, part of me wants to jump it up to a 10. But I try to reserve that slot for for things like Artificial Brain, where it just completely blows your face off. So all that to say, just amazing band. You have to listen to this album. You have to buy this album. I can't say that enough. I've been kind of on a rant for the past couple of years about how, I know music sharing took off, and for the longest time, I justified myself the same way. I heard a lot of people justifying it in terms of, music's for everyone, man, and like everybody should listen to it, and everyone's doing this, and it's getting their music out there, and yada yada yada. I mean, there are some benefits that have come from the advent of Napster and everything, but by and large, I've said this a number of times, but if you haven't heard me say it, there's this great piece where Trevor from the Black Dahlia murder was talking about how, like, I know we don't make any money from record sales. It's like pennies on the dollar, if even that, like fractions of pennies. And so that argument's, fair to be made. But he's like, you got to understand that our sales ultimately allow our record company to decide, hey, what tour are we going to put this band on? And that's where a band makes their money, is from playing shows and selling merch. And if they're not getting good venues, if they're not getting on good tours, if they're not able to get themselves out there in person in a big way, then they can't survive. And that's when you see bands like this disappear. So his argument was, we know that when you buy our CD, we're not getting much money directly from that, but indirectly the payoff is huge because it's allowing us to, get our name out there, get on these bigger shows, and be able to sell more stuff directly to the people. So that's my soapbox. Please buy your music. And again, with things like Bandcamp, a lot of these albums, you can get them super cheap. And even when you can't, if you're a music lover and you want to see better bands succeed, like I know I listen to the radio every now and then, and still, I'm that bitter old man that is just like, man, there's so much better music out there that could be on here instead of this garbage. And it all comes down to what's selling. I mean, that's the business world we live in. So if you like it, put your money where your mouth is and buy this freaking music and buy this amazing album, In Vengeful Reverence, Moss Upon the Skull. If you want to quickly pull it up, it is on Bandcamp, like I said. Definitely get it. It is going to be on my year-end list for sure. A couple other shout-outs I wanted to cover here. And I'm probably going to just kind of go back, a week or so, just to throw a few names. Haiduk, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing it right, but Haiduk, put out a new album. This is a band that I reviewed about 3 years ago, and I was really glad that it's a one-man band, and dude reached out to me again and said, hey, you reviewed my last album, you should check out this new one. I feel like it's my best. And this guy's really cool. It's a black and death metal band, much more focused on riffs though. Like you used to listening to your typical black metal where it's all tremolos or maybe it's that kind of warping kind of death spell omega sound. This is different. Like this is straight up like thrashy, sometimes heavy metal influenced riffs, and he has this weird distortion that's very just it sticks in your head, which is something I really liked about it. A lot of bands, like, I'll like the album and then I'll forget who they are, within days, because they all kind of sound the same. Like this guy, you hear the guitar and you instantly know, like, oh, it's that dude. Reminds me a little bit of like Rebel Wizard, but again, it's more of this like weird, almost like Super Nintendo kind of sounding distortion. And then on top of that, these really involved riffs. Like it's all about the guitars. There are vocals on the album, but by and large, the emphasis is on the guitars. And so that one's really cool. So that's called Exomancer, and again, it's by Haiduk or however you pronounce it. I mentioned Gorod a little bit ago. Gorod just dropped a new album called Aethra. You can find it. Actually, I was going to say you can find it on Bandcamp, but I'm not sure that that's true right now because I ended up putting up a track from YouTube. But you can at least get a sample of the title track on YouTube. If you don't know Gorod, they're another progressive death metal band. Pretty popular. This new album's through Overpowered Records. Also, I'm not a huge deathcore fan per se. There's definitely some bands that I really enjoy listening to, but deathcore and slam just aren't really my thing. For that same thing I was just saying, like, about bands often really sounding alike. So many deathcore bands are just imitations of each other. That said, Within Destruction out of Slovenia are freaking amazing. And their album Death Wish came out several months ago, but they just got signed to Unique Leader Records, which is a perfect fit for their sound. And now Death Wish is getting reissued via the label. So if you did not listen to that or even pick it up, highly recommended. I think it's the only deathcore album I bought this year, but it is so worth it. The album art's really cool too. And if you like Death Wish, go back and also listen to their last album, Void, which has kind of like a Cthulhu-type creature on the cover. Another, just great album art, great music, really heavy, and they don't take themselves too seriously, too. Like, they go with the whole squatting Slav meme, and their their music videos are outrageous, and they have this whole, like, slam police aesthetic, and there's a, like, workout video style music video where they're wearing 80s leotards and whatnot. So seems like a funny bunch of dudes, not taking themselves too seriously, but also making super heavy, super groovy, just really fun deathcore. What else? Real quick, also throw in there Apex by Mycelia. These guys are really cool, mixing up kind of jazz and gent with progressive metalcore. It's through Eclipse Records. I was getting kind of a mixture of everything from Good Tiger to Within the Ruins. Really great guitar work. Vocals are a little bit hit and miss, but when they're on, they're on. Kind of Between the Buried and Me vibes at times as well. But overall, this is a really strong album, and I see them going good places in the future. So if you're into that kind of progressive metalcore style, check them out. And then from a more hardcore standpoint, Race Trader dropped their album 2042. If you just want straightforward, balls to the wall, just rip your fucking face off hardcore, this is the album for you. It's been released through Good Fight, seems very appropriate. You get a lot of those just super straightforward, really aggressive, sometimes metallic, hardcore outfits coming through that label, and Race Trader's no different. It's just like a blazing inferno of an album. So if you like things like Godmother, Elder Devil, Implore, you got to do it. You got to do it. And then finally, Mathcore. So we got Noisays, their self-titled album, and this is through our good friends at Dark Trail Records, which is run by Christian over at Mathcore Index. And by the way, if you haven't listened to Mathcast, they have, like, the best music podcast in town, if you ask me. Like, Christian and Levi are just fun to listen to. They're super passionate about their music. There's no, like, goofy put on. I met Christian in person, and he's very much the same person in person that he is on the podcast. So it just feels like you're hanging out with buddies, and they're always recommending, like, the best music. They're my go-to. As soon as that monthly podcast drops, I'm instantly ready to go. I'm super excited because I know I'm going to walk away from it with like 5 to 10 bands that I want to instantly check out and hear more from. But yeah, this new album from Noisays, they put it out via their label. And if you love like the Number 12 Looks Like You, which to me was a huge formative band, particularly around my early college years, then you're gonna like Noisays. They've got that same kind of progressive aspect to the sound all over the place. There's some Dillinger-esque riffs, but it's not the same kind of straightforward driving force that Dillinger can sometimes be. They kind of jump around. There's post-hardcore elements, there's hardcore elements, there's math rock elements. Really great stuff. So definitely check them out. So I think that's enough of that. Let's see how much time I'm even into this. So switching over, there were two kind of news stories I wanted to highlight really quickly. First of all, this one, I posted this on Facebook and it got a little bit divisive. So let me just say, like, I'm not sharing this story to like push an agenda or, you know, go on either sides. But any times like a politician comes into something, people want to get angry about it. So that is not my intention. I've said many times that I want Metal Trenches to be a place where all different viewpoints can come and just enjoy music together and just sit down and be cool with each other and recognize that we're all human beings. But all that to say, Donald Trump signed a new agenda where basically streaming music is going to make sure that they are paying royalties to the artists. So going back to my rant from before, I think this is a really great thing because we know, and you musicians out there know that you're getting screwed when it comes to your music getting streamed. Again, it's great in that it's getting your music out there. Everyone can listen to it instantaneously with the push of a button. That's fantastic. But the fact that you and these other people are not getting paid for your product appropriately just feels wrong. So I think this was a great call. This was pushed forward by a number of musicians, including Steven Tyler from Aerosmith, who just seems like a really interesting dude. He's doing a lot of good things too. He's also involved with a lot of charity now through, namely Janie's Fund, which you can check out, which is more mental health based. But a bunch of musicians got together, and it kind of makes sense when I thought about it, because at first I was like, what is it? And I was also thinking, well, he's kind of a businessman, so, I mean, and he has an entrepreneur kind of viewpoint on things, so in that way I could see how he'd want to support musicians. But then I thought about it more, and I was like, oh yeah, he's like buds with Dee Snider from Twisted Sister. And I don't know how many of you know this, but you can hear interviews from Dee Snider talking about like hanging out with Donald Trump, like pre-election and everything. They got together and were kind of buddy-buddy. And if you know anything about Dee Snider, he was a big advocate of fighting against censorship back in the 80s when like the whole like Tipper Gore thing was going on. And you can find videos of various metal musicians from the time speaking up in court against the censorship movement, and Dee Snider was one of those people, and he gives a really cool speech. So it all kind of came full circle, and I'm like, oh yeah, well, Dee Snider, super anti-censorship, very pro like musician, pro music, and he happens to have some friends in high places. So if he's in there, I'm sure he put a bug in his ear at some point, and Trump's probably got other friends through that world that allowed this to happen. So regardless of what you think of Trump or any of these people, I think this is a good thing. I hope it's not just lip service and it'll actually lead to something. But yeah, it's overall a really good thing. And then the other story, Ollie, one of the founding members of All That Remains and the guitar player, passed away I think it was last week, but time flies so fast right now, so I could be inaccurate with that. But in any case, I try to stay away from like the ex-musician died stories because oftentimes it comes off as really disingenuous. It's like, I didn't really know this person. I don't know that much about them, so it feels weird to kind of be talking about it and potentially even monetizing that sort of thing. But I do occasionally, like, if it was something that was important to me and that I feel strongly about, that I'll put it out there. So I'll just say that in my post on Facebook, I was like, I've made fun of the band a lot recently for their later albums because I really do not like their more recent stuff. I think it's super corny. I'm just going to be real. And that's the other thing I hate about these stories too, because like you'll get people that are constantly mocking someone or even straight up saying how much they hate them, and then as soon as they die, everyone's like, oh my god, like it's so great. Like even when like Chester from Linkin Park died, I was like, yeah man, their first album was a huge important thing to me. I'm really bummed that another person committed suicide, especially since I'm in the mental health field. But I'm not going to sit here and act like, I was a huge Chester fan for the past, decade, because that's just not true. Like, I couldn't stand their music, especially their latest album for the longest time. Same thing with All That Remains. Like, I really did not like their latest albums. I always tried to give them a shot and hope they would come back. But I will say that This Darkened Heart and The Fall of Ideals were both like huge formative metal albums for me. They're still, I count them among like my favorite metalcore albums, alongside like Poison the Well and some of the As I Lay Dying albums. The first major label Killswitch Engage album, like I would put them up in that tier, and even say that they had some of the best riffs that just, man, I listen to them today and I just get chills. It's just amazing solos, amazing hooks, really catchy choruses. They already had, some cheesiness back then, but it was just more on the level where it worked for me. And man, those albums just are incredible, and I'm really bummed that we lost another really talented young guitarist that, that I don't think they've, as of me recording this, have released what happened and why he passed away, but we've just had too many lately. I mean, we lost, and forgive me, because again, I didn't know these people, so I don't remember the names a lot, but we lost a dude from Architects who I really enjoyed his playing, and we lost, gosh darn it, why can't I think of the band right now? Fuck. That really pisses me off. See, this is why I don't like being disingenuous and being like, oh yeah, man, I love this guy, and then I'm like, oh fuck, what was their name? Damn it, it'll come to me. But in any case, you may even know who I'm thinking about. It was another metalcore guitarist from a band that I really enjoy, but I'm just completely fucking blanking right now on even what the band was. But yeah, it's just all sad to see like really young and talented guitar players pass away, especially when there's just so many like generic kind of pretenders out there, people who are just kind of, I don't even know what I'm trying to say. In any case, it's a bummer, and I wish the best of the band. I'm sure it's really hard for them since they're all really close and they actually know each other personally, so my thoughts go out to them, regardless of how I feel about your music today, and also to the family, because it's always a sad thing. So I think that's going to kind of wrap it up for now. We'll see how this ends up going, how this is received. Again, if you liked what you heard, hit us up on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Vero, wherever you tend to follow us. Hit up the email. I'm always glad to get emails. Every now and then I also get like fan emails where it's like, hey man, thanks so much for what you do with the site. Like, I found so many great bands and bought so many great albums this year thanks to you. And that really does mean the world to me, because that's what this site is all about. At this point, we're not really monetized. I'm hoping to change that a little bit. I don't want it to be about money, but we do have a Patreon at Metal Trenches. Nobody's on it right now, but if you like what you hear and you like what we do, I would love to make this something that it's not going to pay the bills, but every little bit counts. But in any case, even barring that, it is nice to hear from people when they tell me that the site's serving its purpose, which really is to just support the bands, get the music out there, get people to buy music, and just show you something other than the big label stuff. And because I love Behemoth and have pretty much all of their albums, listen to them regularly. I love The Satanist, but I'm going to be honest, and if you like the new album, that's totally fine. Like, I didn't hate it, but to me, when I see that Behemoth is like number one selling album in metal, when I feel like this is, by comparison, their worst album, that bugs me. Like, it gets under my skin. I'd much rather see something like Moss Upon the Skull or Serox or any of the albums that I put up take that slot, just because I feel like they put more work in, it's more accomplished, there was more songwriting skill involved, they just earned it more. And I realize that's not probably going to change on the higher level, but that's a big part of the site, is I want to get those names out there, get people buying the albums, get the labels to see that, oh wow, people are actually taking notice of this, and help them climb up to a higher tier. And I've seen a few bands do that, which has been really awesome and really rewarding too, where I'll see a band that reached out to me back in 2014, 2015, were independent or were on like a really tiny label, and now 3 years later I'm getting a press release from a major label about their new album, and they're taking off and their popularity is getting there. And that can happen a number of different ways. A lot of it, I think, comes down to just being really good at marketing yourself. I'm seeing bands or projects rather, like Sectioned and Frontier, which are both more or less kind of run by the same person, and dude is just great at marketing that stuff. And as a result, even though he's just on his own, he's just selling the stuff out. People know their name. People, if they know one, they know the other two. There was a point where I kind of made a faux pas, and I didn't even realize that Section and Frontier were from the same musician, and immediately people called me out on it as soon as I put them side by side. And I'm like, that's so cool that people know that, because it used to be like years back where if I mentioned a band, people didn't know who that band was, much less like what other bands the musicians are playing in. So the community around that is really cool. I think it's heading in a really positive direction, and I want to be a part of that. So that'll wrap it up for now. Thanks for listening to my garbage, meandering, and often mispronounced and stuttering speech, and hopefully we'll do this again.